Well, that was a curious qualifying session in Portugal. The wind was a big factor, crosswinds that is, headwinds too, and tailwinds, I guess. And beyond that, traffic, inevitable traffic. Max Verstappen, after qualifying, very, very annoyed with, I think it was Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin. Why didn't they let me pass? And there does seem to be some sort of pattern there to teams, drivers, engineer duos that seem to do a better job generally in the traffic than others. But we had some really weird results. For example, Lewis Hamilton in Q2 out on the medium tyre, as he would be. Valtteri Bottas likewise, the two Red Bulls, Charles Leclerc, all on the medium tyre, trying to get that tyre as the race tyre which is going to start the race tomorrow. He does a brilliant 17.9, easily quickest in Q2. And so logically you would say, wow, 17.6, 17.5 maybe in Q3. Not a bit of it, 18.3, a couple of thousandths slower than his teammate Valtteri Bottas. Blame the wind, blame traffic probably. Not so much traffic as the effect of the car in front being felt by these 2021 Grand Prix cars. It seems like never before. And we had other anomalies. We had Lando Norris, brilliant in Q1, P2 in Q1, and going right the way through to Q3, keeping that momentum, driving beautifully, driving as he has all year. But Daniel Ricciardo in the other McLaren-Mercedes, yesterday looking pretty sharp, looking as if he was starting to get back with the rhythm again, looking as if he was starting to enjoy his racing again when he was out of the car. 1.2 seconds slower in Q1, didn't even get through into Q2. So you got Lando Norris, absolutely stunning throughout qualifying and eventually finishing P7 in Q3. And Daniel Ricciardo eliminated in Q1. Again, wind a factor, traffic a factor, but there is a bit of a pattern there. Lando does seem to be able to get it together beautifully. Got to say here, I think he was tempting fate a little bit. Lando's race engineer in Q3 at a point when Max Verstappen hadn't yet done a time. He'd actually done a very quick time, 18.2, but he'd had that time deleted for using too much track coming out of turn 4. And when they went out for their final stints, Lando's race engineer got on the radio and said, Max is behind you. He hasn't yet put in a time. Don't do him any favors. Cutting it a little bit thin, I think, with the stewards and everything going on with traffic at the moment. And Max Verstappen very annoyed after qualifying purely because of traffic. But to Lando's credit, he did get absolutely right out of the way when Max was going past. It wasn't that cost Max Verstappen a place on the front row of the grid. On his first run in Q3, he did an 18.2, which would have been good enough for the pole, but he did exceed those track limits at turn 4. He did so because he had a bit of a moment mid-corner and just had to use road to let the car settle. It was a beautiful lap otherwise, but then when he went out for the final run, there was more wind and there was traffic. There was the Sebastian Vettel Aston Martin. Having said that, Sebastian was there in Q3, so congratulations to him. First time he's looked like he's been in anywhere near Dancing with the Music in 2021. And Aston Martin looked pretty strong throughout qualifying. And also initially Lance Stroll, but again, traffic, I guess changing wind conditions too, but probably more traffic with Lance Stroll meant that he didn't get out of Q1 either. So it's Valtteri Bottas on the pole, just ahead of Lewis Hamilton, but well shy of the time that we know that car can do, 4 or 5 tenths shy of that lap time. So that was odd. And then Max Verstappen not able to get the best out of the Red Bull either. Max had been really good in the morning. In FP3, he was quickest from Lewis and Valtteri Bottas. But in Q1, he said that the engine felt it was a little bit down. They managed to rectify that, but thereafter he was on the back foot, trying to get a lap time in when there was too much traffic, when the wind conditions were changing. And then, as I say, he made that error on the first lap of Q3. Without that, he probably would be on the pole. Doesn't mean that much really, because he has 2 Mercedes in front of him now, and it is a really difficult circuit on which to overtake. Sergio Perez did a good job, starts on the outside of the second row alongside Max, but a very, very big lose in Q1. Pretty lucky to get away with that, but the team did a very good repair job in the garage, got him out there, and as I say, P4 in Q3. Carlos Sainz next for Ferrari, but a difficult day for them. 4th and 10th in Q1, 9th and 10th in Q2. Charles Leclerc just ahead. Charles didn't get in the lap in Q3. Carlos Sainz did a very good job. First time he's out-qualified Charles this year. As we said yesterday, looking a little bit sharper in the car now. But Ferrari, there were nervous moments for them as to whether they would get through to Q3 at all. But they did, and Carlos will be starting 5th and Charles 8th. Not too bad for Ferrari, in a good position to pick up some strong points tomorrow. Best of the rest honours, as ever, very, very close. It went ultimately to Esteban Ocon, who, like Max Verstappen and had a lap time deleted in Q3, responded really well under pressure. And that car looking very, very strong. Fernando Alonso, sadly, fading dramatically after the promise he showed yesterday, just made it through into Q2. Didn't make it out of Q2. Big difference between him and Esteban Ocon. But here's a question we must put to Scarbs next week when we talk to him. That's whether or not the Alpine, with that rather strange shaped engine cover that they have, whether or not they're slightly less susceptible to crosswinds than some of the other cars. You could draw that conclusion if you're looking at the excellent lap time by Esteban. But for Fernando, well, that's another story, of course. Lando Norris starts 7th, another excellent performance from him, as I said earlier, 19.1, ahead of Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Charles will be starting on the medium tyre, though. And then the other two top teners were Pierre Gasly, again driving beautifully in the AlphaTauri Honda, and Sebastian Vettel, his best day yet in the Aston Martin. And speaking of Lando, another great graphic came up for us, turn 5. Lando braking 5 metres later than Lewis Hamilton into turn 5. He's only 2 kilometres quicker in top speed, so a nice performance there for Lando. He'll enjoy that. Actually, over the corner, they were very, very even. So interesting to see the Mercedes and McLaren comparison there. And another big shout out, as ever, for George Russell at Williams, who missed going through to Q3 by only 0.1 of a second. I loved his comment. He's back in the garage saying, I thought Lando was going to give me a tow at the last minute there. No, sorry about that, George. But nonetheless, a great, great lap by George. How many times have we been saying that in the last, well, ever since the middle of last year, really? Brilliant. So that was it. Rather strange, inconclusive qualifying. As I say, it was all a function of all these other variables, and I suppose that's a good thing, and probably we'll have them in the race as well. Traffic will become an issue there if Max is stuck behind the two Mercedes. Not going to be a lot he's going to be able to do about it, I wouldn't have thought. But it looks as if he has plenty of untapped speed in that car. Equally, Lewis Hamilton does too. Surprised not to see him on the pole, but very good for Valtteri Bottas after his difficult start to the year in Bahrain, and then of course that shunt when he should have been much higher up the field anyway in Imola. So the wind blew and the sun shone and it all looked a little bit empty and vacant afterwards, except that the Euro Formula Open cars pulled up on the grid and staged 2 races of their championship. Cameron Diaz, a young American who we've seen racing in British Formula 3, won both races, one of them from the front row of the grid, one from the reverse grid as well. But it was on the pole for the reverse grid Euro Formula race in Portugal. Enzo Trulli, son of Jarno, surprises all throughout the day in Portugal. The only other little nuggets I can add to this qualifying report is how good it was to see the cars flat through turn 7. That's the right-hand kink before the tight right, turn 8 obviously, but it's a really nice bit of road. The sad thing about that Portugal lap is you got that kink, it was just flat on the soft tyre with no fuel, but there's nothing afterwards but heavy braking. It'd be great if there's a long straight. Note to circuit designers, whenever you have a kink that may or may not be flat, always have a long straight afterwards to reward or penalise the drivers who've either got it right or wrong. And then there's another bit of road that was very annoying for most drivers today and yesterday, and that's the turn 13-14 complex. 13's that tight left-hander, 14 is the downhill right-hander, and braking for that had most drivers either in an understeer moment, bit of oversteer. But it was really interesting watching the aerial shots of Lewis out of 13 getting ready for 14, how he was creating as ever, as Lewis does, a little bit like out of turn 1, braking for turn 2 in Montreal, that left-hander, and then the tight right afterwards. He just manages to create for a millisecond this moment when the car is sitting absolutely square to the road, when he can get the brakes on hard without any risk, or with minimizing the risk of inside front locking or running a bit wide. He, in fact, on his quick lap, he had a little bit of a jink there. Looked like he just gave the steering a slightly bit of an extra turn, got the back end to move a little bit, and just got a perfect straight line exit. All slow speed stuff, but because of the undulations in Portugal, it does require a lot of finesse and a lot of suppleness. Of course, that is what Lewis Hamilton is all about. But it's Valtteri Bottas on the pole. We should be talking about Valtteri. Congratulations to him. Going to be an interesting first corner, actually. I can imagine Toto Wolff saying, now guys, just remember, don't have any issues here, don't want you running into one another, race hard, don't run into one another, sort of Christian Horner thing. Yeah, what does that mean? Anyway, I think Lewis will be sitting there watching if Valtteri does make a good start from the clean side of the grid. And then we'll see what happens thereafter. He looks to be very quick on both the medium, well, quick on the medium for sure, and obviously reasonably quick on the soft tyre. And we'll see what happens. Lots of variables in the air tomorrow. See you then.